The WagerTalk You Pick special is live, giving you the option to pick the league of your choice and get 30 days of picks for only $99. 30 days of the NFL for $99, done. Just want NBA and NHL for the next month? You can do that for only $99 each. That's right, $99 gets you every release from the league of your choice from your favorite handicapper, including 5% best bets for 30 days. No coupon code is required, and 30-day sports passes will go back to regular price Sunday at midnight. So lock in as many sports and handicappers for only $99 before time runs out.
Welcome into the College Football Daily, best damn college football show. I am Drew Martin, joined by Ralph Michaels, Robbie Veno. We got pens up. We got 4 games we're breaking down, including one tonight. So for everyone out there watching live, we got something for you. Replay in the near future. But first up here, Ralph Michaels. Follow him on Twitter at Cal Sports. His work at WagerTalk.com. All kinds of great free information on his page and on his Twitter. Ralph, welcome in, man. How you feeling?
Hey guys, doing great. Took off a couple days in college basketball and just to get myself refreshed. You know, we've talked about how this period of time with, all the sports and doing all the prep work, the college basketball guide is still there. I post a college football schedule with the Sunday lines from Circa, sides and totals, so you can see how much lines moved. And of course, the college football logs with the stat compare and the NFL logs, both in matchup order in rotation. So check them out, please. All free. WT.buzz/RM.
Absolutely. And guys, if you're a totals better, you can see, or a sides better, you can see the plays per minute, plays per game, the differences there, all kinds of good stuff in those college football logs. So make sure to check it out. Ralph Michaels experts page, WagerTalk.com. We also got Robbie Veno at Rob Veno Sports on Twitter. He knows his college football, NFL, man of many talents here. Robbie Veno, happy Wednesday to you. Welcome in.
Happy Wednesday to you, Drew. Glad to be back. I have to ask you, though, without Ralph and I last Wednesday, how'd you survive last Wednesday without the two of us?
Oh, it was difficult.
Or do you remember?
Yeah, I mean, to tell you the truth, no, of course I remember. You guys are two of the heavy hitters in this industry, man. But we made it through. We did all right. But happy to have you back, Robbie.
Yeah, no, glad to be back. Certainly, as Ralph said, busy time of year. I have not even released one college basketball play yet this season because I don't feel that I'm ready to do so at this point in time. That'll show you how heavy the workload is. Credit to those at WagerTalk and all the guys who are actually handicapping college basketball right now and doing a good job with it because, man, it's just a difficult time to follow everything. Ralph, I took a look. I've been watching, and I had something in the back of my mind that you said about the transfer portal in college basketball. We know what it is in college football, but, when I start seeing guys from all over the country that I remember in different places last year playing for different squads this year, it had to have been an enormous task to get all of that down pat because I was a little bit floored by some of the movement that I saw in college hoops. It's crazy.
Yeah, obviously this is a football show, so we won't dwell on it. But, I've talked about this on the basketball show. This season, when you look at the Power 5 conferences, you basically have to throw returning starters out the window. You have teams like Oregon and Baylor that only have one returning starter, that have so many all-conference transfers from other teams that those teams are viable, legitimate conference contenders and even national championship contenders. So, you see Remy Martin, one of the best point guards in the Pac-12, going to start for Kansas. Thaddeus Russell, one of the best point guards in the Northeast, going. Michigan starting Northeastern's transfer. Georgia had 7 of their top 8 scorers transfer out. So you have a team that is entirely new. So, yeah, take returning starters with a grain of salt if you do download the guide. But I will say this, I do look at returning starters much more for the lower conferences because those guys aren't getting the elite transfers in college hoops.
Good points there from both Ralph and Robbie. Guys, we got college football to break down starting in the Mid-American Conference MACtion tonight, Wednesday night, primetime, Ralph. We're getting the Central Michigan Chippewas versus the Ball State Cardinals here. Ball State -2. It's actually flip favorite now, Central Michigan -2.5, 57 being the total. Muncie, Indiana, Ralph. You liking anything here in MACtion?
Well, you look at Ball State, and they're obviously 5-5. Very important game here as they're looking for a sixth and bowl eligible win, and they're off a loss. So I did go to my database, and I looked at what 5-5 home teams do in college football, trying to get that sixth win. And if they're off a loss, like Ball State is off that loss to Northern Illinois, those teams have actually gone 54%. Home dogs that are 5-5 and off a loss have actually covered 59%. So Ball State in a 54% situation at home, and Ball State in a 59% situation as the home dog. But you look at the statistical profile for the season, both have almost played identical schedules. Central Michigan has played the number 91st schedule. The 101st, Ball State, the 80-something. And Central Michigan is actually plus 90 yards per game better. They're plus 31 yards per game. Ball State getting outgained by 61 yards per game and outgained by 42 yards per game. I'm really having trouble talking today, and my apologies. Getting outgained by 42 yards per game in MAC play. Both quarterbacks playing amazing. Plitt, a 12-1 ratio since the Toledo game. Richardson, I know one of your favorites. You guys have mentioned it. 10-0 ratio the last 4 weeks. I just think Central has more going with both Richardson and Nichols. Yes, I know I just gave you a stat that favors the home dog in Ball State. But, Ball State, I give a slight edge on defense. But with the running game and the passing game, the way Central has scored 30, 26, 38, 42, and 54 points the last 5 weeks, a lean with me tonight for the Chippewas.
I'm with you, Ralph. And Robbie, coming to you, Ralph kind of teed it up there with Daniel Richardson, the 5'10" quarterback from Dade County, Florida. Dade County's all-time passing leader up here in MAC, throwing it around. Central Michigan scoring all kinds of points. I agree with the line move, 2.5. I also like the total to the over. I know weather's a little bit of an issue tonight in MACtion, but seeing this at sub 60, I like this over, Robbie. But what do you like in Ball State and Central Michigan?
Yeah, I think when you break it all the way down, Drew, you may consider the fact that maybe they pushed this game down too far total-wise because of weather. What sticks with me, and it's going to rain. Let's face it, the percentage of rain throughout this game, about 60% in the first quarter, up to 84% by the time the second quarter comes around, and then 92 to 98% in the second half. So it's going to be raining. Whether or not it's Florida State or Miami and Pittsburgh, right? It was Miami and Pittsburgh where it went to overtime, and Kenny Pickett got his touchdown pass in, and by the time Miami got the ball back, it was a torrential downpour. I don't know if it's going to be that proportion. I think I read half an inch of rain, which I think an inch of rain is equivalent to 9 inches of snow, so it could be heavy. There's not a lot of wind here, 13 to 15 miles per hour. Both of these quarterbacks have arms to cut through 13 to 15. I'm not too worried about that, but we'll see how the vision and everything is. It's a field turf surface. In that instance, I give advantage offense because they know where they're cutting. The defense doesn't. Grass could go out from underneath you, and you could slip and fall. But I think on field turf, maybe it favors the offense. Ralph said a lot of the things that I was going to say. And in fact, I think in his final analysis, it just comes down to which team was more explosive. And to me, the more explosive team is Central Michigan. They prove it with the big plays. They've proven over the course of the last 3 weeks. Drew Plitt has really, really good numbers. And he's going against a really, really bad pass defense. The same goes for Daniel Richardson. Ball State's overall pass statistics are a little bit skewed. If you just go to MAC conference play, that pass defense is number 9 in the MAC, allowing 68% completion. So Richardson, if it's throwable weather, can do well. Plitt, who doesn't get picked off but takes it in smaller chunks than does Daniel Richardson, could do well. I thought an edge would be Khalil Pimpleton for Central Michigan. is special teams wise. We saw him return 2 punts for touchdowns a couple of weeks back. However, Justin Hall is the equivalent on the other side of the field. So you go back and forth with these teams, guys, and there's really no separators other than I think that the quarterback play and the big play ability of Central is a little bit better than Ball State. I'll say this, point spread wise, Ball State's on an 0-3 spread run. Central Michigan's on a 3-1 spread run. Ralph talked about the urgency for Ball State to get bowl eligible. For Central, it'll take a little bit of doing on Northern Illinois' part, but they could still win this division. If NIU loses their last 2 games, if they lose tonight to Buffalo, and if they lose to Western Michigan next week, then Central could win this division. It's interesting that both of these teams had it right in their hands, and they both lost to Northern Illinois by 1 point. Ball State last week, 30-29. Central lost 39-38 to Northern Illinois, and that right now is what Northern Illinois holds over Central Michigan. I rated the game basically a toss-up. Central Michigan's pass rush is negated by the fact that Ball State has only allowed 1 sack every 51 pass attempts, 51 over the course of their last 5 games. So I think I could try over if the rain isn't that bad, Drew. I don't mind the wind here, but we're going to have to see how heavy this rain is. Might be better for in-game betting.
Hey, Drew, if I may just jump in here, please. And I am by no means trying to talk anyone off the over because both of you guys like it. But I talked with Kelly Stewart on this, on Bet On It today. And in the database, when college football wins are 13 miles an hour or higher, since 2015, if you blindly played every game under, you have covered 58% of the time, going 226 and 165. If winds are 20 miles an hour or higher, you have gone under 71.4% of the time. Absolute best weather site I found for wind, digital.weather.gov. You can see the entire country in the map. You can zoom in where you want. It has directions so you can actually see it, but it is an awesome site. There's a pull down when you go to digital.weather.gov. There's a pull down for wind speeds. It is in knots, so you have to break it down to miles per hour, but a great site. And Drew, I want to mention one more thing before I throw it back to you. Let's tell our viewers, you have a big 5% MAC play, and why you gave out opinions on sides and totals on this game, it's on the other play tonight. So these viewers still have to go to WagerTalk.com and grab your big 5% winner tonight in college MACtion.
5% Wednesday night MACtion, max limit play, WagerTalk.com. Going tonight, prime time, ESPN2. Check it out as we move down the list. Ralph, you don't need to apologize for breaking it out. All we need is the pen swipe. That's what's so good about this show. You just pen swipe it up, baby, and talk away as we move down the list here, guys. Going from MACtion, which is always big time, especially with the three of us, to arguably the biggest game this weekend, guys. We're talking Michigan State and Ohio State. We're seeing at minus 19-point favorites at most shops right now, Robbie Veno. That's the Ohio State Buckeyes is the home favorite against the one-loss Michigan State Spartans. Both teams with their eyes on the playoffs here. High total, 68.5 is what I'm seeing right now. This is kicking us off Saturday, November 20th, 12 noon Eastern kick here in the Horseshoe. What do you like in Michigan State and Ohio State, Rob?
Well, let's get right to the weather first off and get that out of the way. In this game, during the hours that it'll be played, 12 noon Eastern to about 3:30 Eastern, you're looking at low to mid 40s with very light winds, 8 to 9 miles per hour. So again, mid-November, heading toward the third week of November, and we're just not seeing a lot of bad weather across the country in these games. Really remarkable for this time of year. I made the game power ratings wise, Ohio State 16.5. So perhaps it's padded a little bit off of last week's result where Ohio State absolutely trounced Purdue. They came back to life and everything clicked from the opening kickoff. Everything clicked for Ohio State. But you know, in this case, guys, there's a couple of things here which would lead me to Michigan State plus the points and perhaps over the total. I mean, it's that high for a reason. The Ohio State defense last week, obviously when you play Purdue, they're so pass happy, you can kind of defend that way. They won't be able to defend that way against Michigan State with Kenneth Walker III. The offense is too balanced. You have to respect the run. You can't drop 8 in coverage. You can't do any of that stuff against this team because they'll just run it down your throat. All that being said, even though Ohio State knew Purdue was going to throw it every time, A, because that's what they do naturally, B, because they were always in come from behind mode, even though that team, the Ohio State had 34 quarterback sacks heading into that game, and they knew Purdue was going to throw every time, they still allowed Purdue to complete 40 of 52 for 390 yards. That's 77% completion ratio, knowing what's coming. And they didn't sack the quarterback one time, knowing they could pin their ears back and go after the quarterback. Now, I know with Purdue, the ball comes out quick. That's the way the offense is designed, but still, that's a red flag on the Ohio State pass defense, if ever there was one. A game where you're up 2-3 touchdowns at a time and you still can't stop a team from throwing the football. And again, even if a lot of that yardage, guys, is collected in garbage time, when you know a team's got to throw and you have 34 sacks coming in, you got to get to the quarterback. You can't just let these completions happen because it's garbage time. So I don't trust that pass defense here at all. And then I'm going to say this. If you look at their overall statistics, you'll find Ohio State's the 14th ranked run defense in the country. Okay, of course, those numbers include the sack yardage. But let's look at Ohio State. Listen, they played Minnesota game 1 of the season. Muhammad Ibrahim gets hurt in that game, but Minnesota trampled through Ohio State's defense. That's a very good run team still. They got to Ohio State. They followed that up against Oregon, a team that loves to run the football. Oregon ran the football very well against them. 38 carries, 269, 7 yards a carry. Since that point in time, the second game of the season, here's who they played. Listen to these run offenses: Tulsa, Akron, Rutgers, Maryland, Indiana, Penn State, Nebraska, and Purdue. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of those teams I just read to you don't even rank in the top 100 in rush offense. And in fact, Rutgers ranks 81st. So you played 6 teams that rank 81st or worse running the football. And now you're going to play Kenneth Walker III. Ohio State doesn't have the 14th best run defense in the nation. They played a list of saps who couldn't run the football. So we'll see if Michigan State can run it against them. And if they can, Drew, it'll open things up for Peyton Thorne at quarterback. Michigan State's been in some 3 or 4 games where they were really playing above average teams, and they stuck within a number like this every single time. Michigan even led by 16 against Michigan State, and Michigan State came back and won that football game. So I think the points are probably too high because Michigan State also has backdoor capability. If Ohio State's up by 24, fourth quarter, stick a touchdown in there, lose by 17, you cover the number. I would think that Michigan State's defense is going to get torched. I absolutely believe that. It's the 130th ranked pass defense in the nation. There's only 130 teams. So they're giving up almost 330 a game. Ohio State should be able to throw the football. They welcomed Jackson Smith and Jigba into the mix last week. He was the leading receiver for this team. They can't drop 8. Travian Henderson will run like crazy. I don't know. It seems like a ton of points, Drew. And it seems like Michigan State should be able to get under that number.
Yeah, I'm looking towards the Spartans as well, Ralph. Interested in your opinion. I just think Peyton Thorne, Kenneth Walker III, running back, quarterback combo here in the Big Ten, kind of underrated. Hey, if they're able to knock off Ohio State, which I think is a big ask, they're going to do a heck of a lot for propelling them into the top 4 of the playoffs. But to stay within, 20 points here of Ohio State, which we can find at some shops right now, looking at the WagerTalk odds screen, guys, I like the Spartans. Ralph, how are you feeling in the horseshoe on Saturday?
I have about 9 things written down, and Rob covered all but one. So I'm going to go back and just quantify something he said, because I actually went through and I wrote down every team and what their rushing totals were. So Minnesota, number 21 rush offense, They gained 203 yards on Ohio State. Oregon, number 10 rush offense in the country, 269 yards rushing, 505 yards. Tulsa, number 40 in the country, 501 yards. So 3 rush offenses in the top 40. Guess what? Nebraska, number 36. What does Nebraska do? Take some wire to wire, easily cover. Michigan State, number 29. Those teams that Rob mentioned that aren't good pass offenses, number 106, 81, 112, 108, 119, and 128. So just repeating Rob's comment because it's such a big deal. Rob said the other thing that I thought was absolutely amazing. You have probably the best offense in college football going against the number 130 pass defense of Michigan State. Dead last. So we have a team we know is going to give up a run. On the flip side, we have a team that we know is going to pass. To me, it is over the entire way. I think this game has a chance to make my card. The more I looked into it and broke it down, the more I liked it. I'm not one to be a big before you play somebody because, you know, you're always focused on this game. But it does need to be noted, Ohio State is 1-9 ATS the week before Michigan. And why is that so important? Well, because they're always such a big favorite the week before Michigan. So do they pull guys in the second half because they know they have Michigan on deck? They're not worried about running up the score because their focus is there. So this is one situation that I do believe it is relevant in that game. And lastly, since Rob took all my notes on this game, I'm going to go back and just remember one thing in the last game when we talked about MACtion. I was remiss and did not mention. You guys know I hate the word revenge because every team has revenge in college football in conference play. Everyone's always played somebody. But it is important when you talk conference championship revenge. And Ball State did beat Central last year in the conference championship. That does get a check mark for me in the Central Michigan column.
I agree with you, Ralph. You know, revenge is kind of an overused word, but in a situation like that, you know, for the conference championship and the conference championship game, I'm with you. I think that might actually kind of check the box. So good stuff here, guys, with the big game in the Big Ten, Spartans and Buckeyes. That will be a fun one to kick us off on Saturday. Next game up, we're going to head to the Big 12 here. Iowa State at Oklahoma. Talk about maybe bubbles bursting, but maybe not. We'll see how this shakes out in terms of getting into the playoffs for Oklahoma. Iowa State at Oklahoma here, Ralph. We're seeing Oklahoma, -6.5 at the opener, guys. It's bought down to a lot of shops right now, Ralph, at -4. There's even some at 3.5 here. It'd be interesting if we even see a 3 by kickoff. 60 being the total right now in Norman. You like it anything here? Cyclones and Sooners.
Well, it's tough to say that a one-loss Oklahoma's team is one of the biggest disappointments in the country. But they were actually my number 2 power-rated team coming in. I had them tied with Georgia, and they're only outgaining foes by 70 yards per game. They're only outgaining conference foes by 29 yards per game. So does that make them more disappointing? I'm not sure. You look at Iowa State, and people thought Iowa State could challenge. What happens? You lose to Iowa, not a bad loss because you were -3 turnovers. You lose to Baylor, we see that's not too bad. You lose to West Virginia, yeah, that was bad. And then you lose to Texas Tech on, a 62-yard field goal. You allow Texas Tech 529 yards. That is not good. So who's the bigger disappointment? I'm not sure. Oklahoma still probably feels they have a chance to get into the playoffs. Obviously, their biggest 3 foes are coming up. The way Texas has played, you know, the Iowa State, the Oklahoma State game, and then perhaps the rematch against Oklahoma State will be a big deal. But, you know, I've gone back and forth on this game, and I think Iowa State's 3rd loss is more important for that team because they thought they still had a shot because you had 2 conference losses. You were playing Oklahoma. If you beat Oklahoma and Oklahoma had 2 losses, you had a shot. Now that you have 4 losses and you have 3 conference losses, you know, the Big 12 championship is gone. Oklahoma, you know, be it Spencer Rattler, be it Caleb Williams, back and forth, Pools Rattler back in, can't do anything last week. I'm going to just give you blatant leans, guys. I would lean with Iowa State because I can't play Oklahoma as a favorite. I would lean to the under just because what we've seen Oklahoma's offense do against capable defenses. And while they gave up a lot of yards last week, I still consider Iowa State a capable defense. So slightest of leans for me without giving you a strong opinion on a game, just because there's times, guys, even when we study games, break them down and handicap them, it doesn't mean we have a strong opinion on a side or a total.
Yeah, absolutely, Ralph. And Robbie, coming to you next here. Norman, Saturday, Cyclones, Sooners. What are you liking, man?
Well, let's start with this. Oklahoma still does have a chance to get to the Big 12 championship game. Now, last week, Lincoln Riley was all upset because Dave Aranda kicked the field goal with 3 seconds left, called timeout to do so. And, after the game, I think Lincoln Riley found out after the game why he did that, because I don't think he knew at the time, looking at his actions on the field. But that field goal basically has put Baylor into the Big 12 championship game if, in fact, there's a 3-way tie between OU, Oklahoma State, and Baylor. If it comes down to that, Baylor is automatically in because of the point differential between these 3 teams. And for Oklahoma to get in the case of a 3-way tie, they will have had to have beaten Oklahoma State by 12 or more points. So big field goal, big 3 points, great coaching decision by Dave Aranda to do so. That being said, Oklahoma still can find their way in if they win out. And again, if they beat Oklahoma State by 12 plus, that's assuming there's a 3-way tie. Caleb Williams, it was reported he got benched for 2 series last week. And without seeing it with my own eyes, it's hard to tell if he was benched because of poor play, which of course at the time he was not playing well, or if he was benched because he got his hand stepped on. He came back 2 series later and played. The injury this week in practice doesn't seem to be anything whatsoever. Looks like Caleb Williams will be your starting quarterback in this particular game. I think that things came a little bit too easy to Caleb Williams, and he has improvised quite a bit the whole way since he got into games. And that improvisation got to him a little bit last week. So we'll see. I think he probably gets grounded by what happened to him last week, if it was a benching. And I think you'll see better play out of him. The Iowa State offense, it's been really good. It's been really good against good teams. I mean, Baylor, next to Oklahoma State, is arguably the best defense in this conference. And they got 479 total yards against Baylor, 216 on the ground, 263 through the air. And I think Iowa State still, despite the fact that Brock Purdy has been there for a long time now, they still don't get recognized for having as good of a passing attack as they do. They're still perceived as Breece Hall, and a running game. They get 418 yards against Kansas State, another really good defense, and a team that doesn't allow many opposing teams to get off a lot of plays. So 418 is big. They threw for 307 against Oklahoma State, 476 against Texas, but we know Texas's defense is not very good. And then they throw for 306 last week against Texas Tech. Bottom line here is that Oklahoma's pass defense just isn't very good, hasn't been good all season long. And Iowa State being the balanced offense that they are, I can see them scoring here. This is an 11 a.m. Central start. Ralph talked about the amount of losses that Iowa State has, and maybe you can apply that to extra focus for this game because, I mean, Oklahoma's going to be a Super Bowl type game for Iowa State every year anyway. But with the knowledge that they're not going to the Big 12 championship and they could spoil Oklahoma's bid to go there, I think becomes even greater focus and motivation for this team. Oklahoma's been outgained or was outgained last week immensely by Baylor, 413 to 260. When I look at Oklahoma's offense, and I know it didn't perform well last week, but Iowa State's defense, this is interesting, guys, because they were the first team to try and negate these spread offenses in the Big 12 conference and go to this 3-2-6 defense. But the last 3 weeks, they just haven't been good. And you can't go to Morgantown and allow West Virginia to throw for 370 against you. West Virginia doesn't throw for 370 against anybody. But obviously, Drew, one of your favorite coaches, Neil Brown, figured something out. And West Virginia played really well offensively in that game. And then last week, of course, you give up 529 yards to Texas Tech, who was, questioning who would even play quarterback for them. I think both of these teams score a lot of points in this game. I don't know how that gets avoided here. It seems inevitable to me. I saw the total at 60.5, meaning that a 34-27 game gets you over the total. I don't see any problem with that. These two defenses, these two offenses. So I'll probably look it over in that game, guys.
Okay, like it, Robbie. And guys, we got one game left here, breaking it down in the ACC. My favorite matchup on the board, Wake Forest and Clemson. Rob, Veno, coming back to you first here. Demon Deacons, the dog on the road in Death Valley, South Carolina. Clemson opened up -3.5. We're seeing mostly -4 here. That's the Clemson Tigers as the home favorite. 56.5 being the total, so a little tick up there from the opener of 53.5. What are you liking in Clemson, South Carolina on Saturday, Rob?
Well, I can't like Clemson, Drew. I mean, and this is the game of the ultimate contrast, right? The polar opposites. You get Clemson's elite defense against Wake Forest elite offense. Something's got to give. And you get the Wake Forest atrocious defense against Clemson's atrocious offense. Something's got to give. In this case, I think I'd prefer to have Wake Forest. I would prefer to have Sam Hartman. He's far more capable at quarterback of making plays at this point in time than is DJ Uiagalelei, who last week against UConn, guys, had a tough time. You go read a couple articles. I happen to watch it because I'm a UConn guy. But, I mean, this guy continues to overthrow receivers. I know he's a tall quarterback, but he seemingly throws everything high. That in itself can help Wake Forest get off the field. You don't even have to be a good defense if the opposing quarterback is going to miss and miss and miss again. Last week, 21 of 44. Now, maybe we have to give Uiagalelei a little bit of slack here because he did play 2.5 quarters on a sprained knee ligament. And that probably carries over to this week. He's not healthy. And in fact, the backup quarterback for this team, who is a Connecticut native, his brother actually QBs for UConn, Tyson Fumachan, he gets hurt. He hurts his shoulder in the game. So he won't be available this week. So it's Uiagalelei, and that's it for Clemson. So the knee injury could be significant in this particular contest. What's more significant is the fact that they lose Justin Ross for the year. Foot surgery. Justin Ross had just come back this year to play wide receiver, best wide receiver on this team in the championship game 2 years ago when Clemson won the title, or 2 or 3 years ago. I forget which one it was. But he was the best wide receiver on the field and comes back this year. Now he's hurt, 54 catches on the season. Clemson doesn't have a lot of offense to begin with. You can't be without him. Troublesome for this team moving the football all season long. Again, I think that Sam Hartman and Wake Forest, with the precision of that offense, I know Clemson's defense is really, really good, but Wake Forest offense is so precise. And you read a couple of coordinators, more than a few coordinators from the ACC who say that Wake Forest offense is as hard to prepare for as in some cases a triple option would be. That's how unique it is in its schemes. I think Wake Forest is the right side here, guys. Probably a close game, but I think they can get enough done offensively, and I think Clemson will help their defense by playing poor offense one more time. I mean, if you can't really move the ball against Connecticut, I know they scored 44 points. I think one was on a fake field goal, but they had a lot of complaints with their offense after the game. So give me Wake Forest here, plus points. Clemson ran 99 plays last week, and I thought that perhaps they sped it up a little bit. But when you look at time per play, they really didn't. One every 22 seconds. So nothing new here for Clemson. I mean, I think they've tried every trick they have in the bag, guys, and they still can't move the football. It's game 11. I don't think you can come up with new tricks now, so give me Wake Forest.
Yeah, it's been a while, Ralph, since Clemson has had good offensive football here. It's just tough to bet a Wake Forest game under. It really is. Even if we're getting over, the mid 50s here. I like Wake Forest, Ralph. I do, for a lot of the reasons Rob Veno just brought up. We're getting a better quarterback. We're getting the team with more to play for. I know they're on the road here, but well-coached team. What do you like here, Wake Forest and Clemson, Ralph?
Well, Rob, I'm coming back to you for a question because let's remember, even though Wake Forest lost 2 weeks ago to North Carolina, that was a non-conference game. They just hadn't played each other in so long that they did a home-and-home series. So they are still undefeated at 6-0 in conference play. Clemson's 5-2. NC State's 5-2. If Clemson wins out, NC State wins out, and Wake Forest loses to Clemson and Boston College, which clearly can happen both on the road the next 2 weeks. They played their final home game, Rob. Do you know who the Atlantic goes to? You're always on top of those things, and if I caught you off guard, I apologize.
No, but a piece of the puzzle was solved last week, right? When Wake played they played NC State.
Wake
right?
beat NC State.
Yeah.
Okay,
So,
Wake beat NC State. So that would give them the tiebreaker over that. And so then whoever wins the Clemson game.
And NC State has beaten Clemson already. So if Clemson beats Wake, you run into that three-way round robin, which in that case, the tiebreaker goes a little deeper and probably isn't the same as the Big 12 tiebreaker was. So I'd have to look into who wins that tiebreaker if it becomes
no problem.
Complete circle.
But now you do have a team like Wake Forest, which now has incredible pressure on them, guys. And don't discount that when you get to November. You have one loss. You have potential to go to the ACC Championship. You have potential to go to the Orange Bowl. That is a big deal, and that does concern me a little bit. That's part of the reason Wake won't make my card. I do like Wake Forest. I have a definite lean here, but I am big into situational handicapping late in the season when a team, granted, this isn't Alabama. This isn't Ohio State, teams that are used to playing those type of games. We've seen Michigan fall year after year after year under that pressure of playing the big guys. Well, how big of a game is this? Last year, Clemson opened the season at Wake Forest as a 34-point favorite. That means in this situation, at home, they would have been a 40-point favorite. That's a 36-point difference from one season to the next. That could be one of the biggest we've ever seen. Of course, Clemson is one of the most disappointing teams. They have dropped 15 points in my power rating numbers from my opening numbers to this current week. So a 15-point spread difference is as significant as it gets. But Wake Forest's offense has had a season high against 3 of its last 4 opponents. Wake Forest offense has scored, 30-plus in every game, 35 points plus in every game. And then when I look at the Clemson defense, yes, their defense is outstanding, and yes, they're allowing 310 yards per game. But I'll tell you what, they've played 2 passing offenses all year. What happened when they played Boston College? And Boston College didn't even have – Boston College was with Grissel, not Jerkovic. So Boston College threw for 311 yards. Pitt threw for 302. They're still allowing 58%, which isn't Clemson-like. So I have all edges going to Wake Forest here. And even if they're down 10, this team will keep their foot on the gas and keep trying to close the gap. That I think the back door is wide open. But 2 reasons it's not going to make my late phone card. Number 1, a 36-point difference from last year's line. These teams are not 36 points different from one year to the next. And number 2, the pressure Wake Forest has against a very easy and carefree Clemson, which is playing November with no pressure for the first time in many, many seasons.
Ralph, you bring up the discrepancy from last season to this season. I love it, man. It's a great point to have, but I'm interested in your take, what you think it should be then, because we're going from Trevor Lawrence to a quarterback that couldn't start on a lot of teams. Let's face it, we already went over the Clemson quarterback room. And Wake Forest, this team has just been surprising on the upside pretty much all season long. So in my opinion, it is kind of worthy of this big of a move.
Well, okay. You look at their defense. Their defense allowed 500 yards to Virginia, 500 yards to Louisville, 500 yards to Syracuse, 600 yards to Army, 600 yards to Army, 546 to North Carolina, and then 482 to NC State. The only team under 480 yards in their last 7 games is Duke, and everyone holds Duke to 315 or less. So, it's my power ratings have Clemson down 15 and Wake Forest up 3 since the opener. Now, obviously, I had Wake Forest rated very high, and they were expected to do this. This isn't a big shock for those that follow the ACC because Wake Forest was supposed to be this good. But, I look at numbers from one season to the next, and part of that, Drew, is did those teams move that much? Now, what would I make the line? I probably would make the line the same number. So I'm not saying it's a bad number, but what I'm saying is when a team is accustomed to getting 30 points and now you're basically in a pick 'em roll, you have to learn to win against good teams before you learn to cover against good teams. Now they are in a small dog roll instead of a small favorites roll, but that is enough to keep me off of a team.
Sure. No, good stuff, as always, from Ralph Michaels, guys, on Twitter, at CalSportsLV, Stat Daddy himself. We got Robbie Veno as well. Robbie, throw it over to you for, final thoughts here. Best bet if you got one, man, for the show.
Yeah, let me just chime in real fast here where my power ratings are concerned. I do have Clemson as the largest drop of any FBS team so far this season. I have them down 20 off of my season opener. I have Wake Forest up 6.5. So about a 4-touchdown difference between one ascending and one going straight into the tank. And hopefully if you're on Wake Forest out there, the veteran leadership that they have is what carries you through, because Ralph's right. They're in an environment that they haven't been in. And you're asking them to win 2 huge games in a row. So it's not the easiest of situations for Wake Forest here. Best bet, Drew, I'm going to go right back to Norman, Oklahoma, because I just at 60.5, I don't see how I could play anything but over in that game. I expect Oklahoma to bounce back a little bit here. I think that what I'm seeing out of the Iowa State defense at this point in time is that teams are becoming a little more patient with them. This umbrella type thing that they developed, John Heacock, their defensive coordinator, was the first guy to come up with it. It's been copied all across the country by various teams. We see it done to Lane Kiffin's Ole Miss team. People are stealing it everywhere. But he was running this in the Big 12 2 years before everybody else got to it. And now the Big 12 has had 2 years to get used to it. I think Oklahoma will be patient. They'll run the ball. They'll throw underneath. They'll get their points. And I don't see their defense stopping Iowa State here in this game. So give me over 60.5 in the Iowa State-Oklahoma game. I think it'll be a lot of fun. And like I said before, 34-27 in that game does not seem unreasonable at all. And that cashes your ticket at this point in time. So that's the way we'll look, over 60.5.
Good stuff from Rob Veno. Check him out, Rob Veno, WagerTalk.com. Guys, for my best bet for the show, I'm going on Wake Forest, the Demon Deacons here, guys. +4. I actually bet them at the opener, +3.5. So we're even getting a better number as we're filming this now. I just think offensively, they get the better quarterback, more accurate. The offense going to carry them. Ralph touched on it earlier. That back door could be open. So did Robbie. And Clemson, just such a big disappointment here, guys. I don't think the market is even compensated enough, even though they've played, I guess, relatively better football of late. But still, Wake Forest, ride this train. They've been covering games at a pretty high clip of recent. So Demon Deacons +4 for me. Ralph Michaels at CalSportsLV on Twitter. Check him out at WagerTalk.com. A lot of great free information. Those college football logs are something I use personally, guys. Recommended out there for everyone. Ralph, any final thoughts here for the show? And if you have a best bet?
I'm going to go Ohio State first half over 35.5. That's the current number. You look at Ohio State. Yeah, they took their foot off the gas on offense last week. We talked about on this show, in fact, earlier this year, Ryan Day kept that offense going in the second half. Well, he has slowed it down, and that's the important adjustment you have to make. When you're watching a team and you say, oh, Ryan Day keeps his foot on the gas in the second half, well, what we look at early in the season in non-conference play often can change late in conference action, and that's been the case. They scored 45 the first half against Rutgers, 38 against Akron, 35 against Maryland, 44 against Indiana, 45 against Purdue. The only 2 times they didn't score 38 points or more themselves, Penn State and on the road at Nebraska, those 2 defenses far better than this Michigan State, number 130 pass offense. Ohio State facing that rushing team. We know what kind of yards they've given up. So I am going to play first half with Michigan on deck. Current total across the board, 35.5.
He's Ralph Michaels. Check him out, wagertalk.com. For Ralph Michaels, Robbie Veno, I am Drew Martin. Pens up, guys. College football daily. Best damn college football show out there. We will be back next week as well. So come back and join us here Thanksgiving week. Ralph, Rob, and Drew. Guys, best of luck with your bets. Until then, please smash that like button. We'll talk next week.
Sign up for the free WagerTalk text club to gain access to free plays and exclusive discounts. Just text WagerTalk to 33222 to sign up and get a $10 coupon to use on WagerTalk.com.